I'm just going to start off with a quick video that we presented at a Think Mobile event that we did in New York just recently. So.
Are you serious? Locksmith.
How to remove gum from fabric. Sitting in gum is no fun.
Can you just let me out here?
So that's just like an example of how much the mobile has kind of permeated our lives. Like we said earlier, that it's one of the most personal devices that we have these days. We sleep with it right next to us. It's on us at all times. Either one device or, like me, 4 devices. But it really is one of the most personal things. Like in a recent study in the UK of people under 25, they actually said that about 15 to 20% of people said they'd much rather lose their partner than their mobile phone. Which kind of goes to how insane it is that people find this device so personal. But when you think of it in terms of a commercial aspect, in the US at the moment, like our executive director, Eric Schmidt, talks quite a bit about, there's a lot of companies now building for mobile first, rather than as a side strategy. They're actually building, platforms to engage mobile right now. And I think that's because they're kind of building for the future. If you think of where we're going in terms of these type of devices being in everyone's hands, it's going to be quite prolific. I mean, even in Australia at the moment, 96% of Australians have a mobile phone. We're a pretty mobile phone heavy country. We're actually ahead of the US in terms of smartphone penetration as well. And the thing is, like, currently 2 in 3 are internet enabled. That's either with a fully integrated browser or via GPRS or something like that, the old WAP phones. So people can use these phones for search, and they are. Basically, from Google's standpoint, in the Nielsen IT&T survey that was done last year, 73% of mobile users said that they've either used search or it's their most popular activity. And the way that people search is different as well on mobile devices, and I'll cover off some of that today. When you think about it, the mobile has so much more capabilities than a desktop for search as functionality. You can use your voice, you can use the camera, you can type if you want. There are a lot of different things that are coming out, and Google's constantly trying to innovate in the mobile space to find out what users want to search for, how they want to search for it, and how it can best give them the best results or the most relevant results for the experience. In terms of Australia, I think that this is actually already happened. The numbers haven't come out yet, but probably in this quarter, or probably at the end of last quarter, smartphones outpaced feature phones. Now, one of the reasons for this is that the smartphone isn't necessarily for the power users anymore. It's not on a $79 plan. It's not for someone who spends $500 a month. It's not only for business users. There's Android phones that are available for $19 plans that have full integrated browsers. So what this is doing is making it accessible to everyone. You don't have to be a power user to actually get these phones in your hand and use the functionality. Mary Meeker, who's a bit of a digital god in terms of trending, when she was at Morgan Stanley, she came up with these predictions of where we're going to be in the future with regards to mobile adoption. And she said that around about 2012, PC shipments will underpace mobile shipments. So there'll be more mobile shipped every quarter than PCs will be. Well, she came out at Think Mobile in New York and said, "I'm sorry, I was wrong. My predictions are way off. It's ridiculous because it's actually already happened." So she's moved firms now to Kleiner Perkins, and she said that actually in December last year, it had already happened that the smartphone shipments in that quarter outpaced PC shipments. Now, this is a big shift, and this leads to a lot of different ideas of what's going to happen in this space. Because you look at the ramp up of different technologies. So this slide basically goes over, since the quarter that they launched, how fast the technologies have been taken up. And what we're seeing is the mobile internet really going at a rapid pace. So the thing that I like to think about is, in Marketing 101, we always learn about, segmenting customers and demographics. And, there's always been this idea of the early adopter, someone who's a technophile and, loves adopting any type of technology. I think that segment is actually starting to vanish, or it's getting more defined because it's now kind of mass early adoption. You see the lines that are at the front of the iPad 2. Who here in the room has an iPad 2 already? 1, 2, 3, 4. You see the lines at the front for the iPhone 4, the iPhone 5. And I think that, as Google, we give a massive tip of the hat to Apple because they've really changed the game in terms of mobile internet. The first slide where it showed the progression of phones and the different form factors and sizes. In a very past life, I used to work for Crazy John's. I remember selling, Nokia 3310s, Nokia 8010s, the ones with the snake game and the monochrome, screen. That's only 10 years ago. The first color phone didn't come out till like 2001. But since 2007, when they launched the iPhone, it's completely changed. Like what I saw was people are always saying, oh, the phone's too big. It's too big. I don't want to carry it around with me. It's terrible. Who really complains about the size of their smartphone anymore? I don't really hear many people complaining. It's actually come back to a pretty medium-sized phone. But the fact is that the functionality of the phone outweighs the size or the discomfort. I remember Zoolander, where they were getting down to phones that were like this big in that movie. That's kind of vanished now. Like people don't really care about that anymore. And this is quite a famous slide. I'm sure you've all seen it before. And it talks about the convergence of mobile internet users versus desktop users. And I think that the idea behind this isn't necessarily that it's going to happen. People are going to use their mobiles for different things. I think the idea behind this is that it's happening so fast that if you don't prepare for it now when it's 10% of your traffic, and learn and try and launch things and iterate and test and fail, there's nothing wrong with failing as long as you get learnings from it to move forward. If you don't do that now and you try and do it when it's 30% of your traffic, the financial impact on your business is going to be significantly more. Better to test now when it's a smaller section of your traffic than later. From our side, we're seeing that mobile search in terms of adoption is currently going at 8 times the rate of desktop search, which is still growing in Australia. 12% of all Google queries in December came from mobile devices. Now, that's in total, but you think of some categories like restaurants. 35% of queries for restaurants in Australia currently come from a mobile device. So if you're working or if you own a restaurant or something like that, are you going to build a mobile web page or are you going to build an actual desktop web page? I would probably advise mobile because that's going to get more and more as we go forward. If you think of even auto, the auto vertical is experiencing sometimes for some clients up to 20% of traffic coming from mobile devices of people on dealer forecourts, comparing cars, taking photos of cars, searching for cars, searching for other dealers down the road. That's not something that you would typically think that people are using their mobile for. And the reason is because the patterns differ in terms of how people use it. You consider, it was mentioned that, you wake up in the morning, use it first. We see the early morning commute, is higher in terms of mobile traffic than desktop traffic. We see the lunchtime peak for people who have possibly their Facebook blocked from their business or something like that, going out and doing status updates at lunchtime. But that kind of peak they're very much inverse in terms of during the day. But then at night, when people are in front of the television or something like that, I always check my phone or read a couple of emails before I go to bed. Does anyone else in the room do that? Yeah? Isn't it disgusting? I love that the government actually came out over Christmas and told all of their employees to turn off their phones or try and switch phones out so they didn't use smartphones and could have a break. But these things really have moved well into our lives. And you look at when you use it, in terms of how Google sees search or web traffic, it kind of essentially has a slow death on the weekends. You're not in front of your computer, you're not doing searches, it essentially goes straight down. But mobile is the inverse, because you're out and about, you're running around, and that's why restaurants is leading to 35%. That's why auto is, because people go out to dealers on the weekend. They don't necessarily go there during the week. So, when you're thinking and planning for mobile, you have to consider these concepts that, it's not the same as desktop. You do need to plan for it separately, and you do need to deliver a different experience. Just some other things, in terms of all the searches, 30% of mobile searches are for local information. So, when I point out some great examples in the Australian market that I've seen, I love the Myer site, right? When they launched their mobile site, the fact that they had their store locator up the top as the first link, it shows that they're considering the form factor that people are coming to. They could put, fashion or perfume or whatever, or what they're known for, but instead they say, someone's going to be accessing my site on a mobile, what do they want it for? They're probably just looking for a store or their closest store. And that's the idea. You have to actually tailor the experience for the device. When you look at also 66% of mobile traffic will be video by 2013. This mirrors the actual desktop web as well. Video is going to become more and more. You saw in the first little clip that I played that the guy was looking for a how-to video on how to get gum out of jeans. Has anyone ever used their phone or their tablet device to do a how-to video? Right? So I do it actually when I'm cooking. So I bring up YouTube and have my iPad or whatever there and actually play how-to videos while I'm actually cooking. That's becoming more and more common as well. So Home Depot in the US has been very, very successful with building how-to videos on YouTube and letting people access it on a mobile platform. For brand engagement, that there's no necessarily a sell there. It's just I go to Home Depot when I need to build something. And also when you think of mobile display, we acquired the AdMob network last year, early last year, and it's already getting over 1 billion impressions per month on the Australian network. And I kind of talked about this a little bit, but the reason the phones are so powerful is because of all this functionality. And I just wanted to go over some quick demos of some new stuff that's kind of come out. Okay, so what I've got here is a few different devices. So certainly the iPhone and the Android device. This is the Nexus S, which is the new Google phone, but we're trying to showcase that we're not necessarily all about Android. The iPhone platform is really, really important, especially in Australia, and we're trying to build things across both platforms. What we did in the US is that we actually launched a series of experiments. I don't know if you can actually see that, a bit light, but what we did was we launched with 5 companies. Google Goggles is image search. Basically, you take a photo, it recognizes the image, and then it essentially conducts a Google search on what it believes the image is. But we tried to tie that in to be a little bit more seamless. So we work with companies like Buick and Disney. Disney, if you took a photo of the Tron Legacy movie poster, it would actually create the link straight to their mobile site where you can go through and watch trailers. I'm just going to do the Buick one here, that essentially you take a photo of a print ad. So all you do is just launch the Google application. This is the updated one for the iPhone, so you can now see that the camera is just right there. Essentially just launching the camera will just activate the phone's camera. You take a photo of the Okay, so 3G network is awesome. There we go. So Buick Regal's come up, and it's actually just a link directly to their mobile site. It'll just go straight through and execute that instantly. So see how it says print ad there? That it's actually recognised as a print ad and can go through and do a search for it. So the idea as well that some of you may have seen this campaign from AXA. So AXA brings print ads to life. So the idea behind it was that you saw this print ad, and then you put your phone here, and it will replay a video, right, that explains what actually happened in the creative. Now, to do this, you had to go to axa.be/iPhone. You had to then click on a link to go to that site. You then had to choose your language, and then it will launch an MP4 video. But what I've done is, this is what's called near-field communication. This is an NFC tag. Basically what this does is it holds information. And the Nexus S is the first phone to have NFC enabled, but it's rumoured to be coming out in the iPhone 5. If this starts to permeate society, then this may become a lot more useful. But the idea behind this is you essentially put it on the device. It'll come up with tags. I'll just turn it to the side. Okay. And all I've done here is it stores 64 bytes of information, and I've just created a link directly through to, a shortened link directly through to the video. So it'll go through to the AXA site, and then what it'll do is it'll say, do you just want to launch movies? All right, as opposed to typing anything in, you don't have to, there's no, challenge there for the user as long as they have in it. There's no QR code, no understanding of what a QR code is, which my mum doesn't know. So the idea is that it's a lot simpler. I might switch back, and I might actually just mention one last thing, which is voice. So we're getting like about 1 in 4 voice searches in the US currently on the Android platform. And the idea behind this is the phone's essentially designed to interact with your voice, but we're putting in a lot of voice commands and voice activation. Hopefully it'll work. Text Antoine, I'm running late, be there in 5 minutes. Right. So basically that's a lot simpler than actually typing it out, finding the phone number, going through to it. And I'm finding I'm using voice more and more every day. Like I write like entire emails in the back of taxis with my voice. Like I can normally get up to about 4 sentences and it does okay. Might get like 1 or 2 words wrong, but it's a lot faster to go back and change 2 words than it is to write 4 sentences. So the idea that our voice recognition software is getting that good, and it's actually self-learning as well. Like when we launch into any new market, we actually see quite a high error rate at the beginning because of accents, inflection, things like that. But once you actually, it starts to self-learn. Like if I did that search and I said cancel, because it's going to assume that it was wrong, and it'll try and learn over time. We actually see the error rate drop, astronomically after 4 days of launch in any country. So the idea that, this is going to get better and better as we go forward really excites me as well. Talking about how, execution matters and how the idea of the phone being, different to a desktop. I just got this example. This is an example from the US. It's nationwide, an insurance application. Pretty boring, right? You take a photo of an accident site, you do a quote, whatever. You find a local salesman or something like that. But the idea that they've actually, before the iPhone and all these apps came out, that they embedded a flashlight in it, in their app to actually, this was before the iPhone had a flash. The idea that they did this, when you in an accident, it might be dark, you might be at night, that they're thinking about what people may use it for. It's it really excites me that people can actually think outside the box, and the reason they can do this is because the functionality of the phone can do so much more. This is just it might be a little bit dark, but this is just an example of the growth of Android. But this would replicate for the iPhone as well. So this is essentially activations per day. And what you'll see is, you'll actually see, that's when the Motorola Droid launched on the Verizon network. And then we actually launched the Samsung Galaxy. And then you start to see Europe and also Asia start to kick off as well. In the US, mainly probably because the iPhone's been on AT&T for so long, Android's now the largest operating system platform. And in Australia, it's growing as well. Like we had 3% market share in Q1 last year, which isn't very much, then 7% in Q2, then 23% in Q3. And I haven't got the figures for Q4 yet from last year, but it's that rate of growth of not only smartphones, but also other platforms that's really important. And that's why I kind of advocate that, when you're building for mobile, don't necessarily always go for the app first. The app's great and it has a lot of functionality, but you also have to consider that if 5% of your market is using another device, whether it be Windows 7 or Windows 7 Mobile, or it's BlackBerry with an integrated browser, they may not be able to download an app. So the idea about that HTML5 as an actual encoding language will be able to do a lot of things that apps can do now. So for example, has anyone used Google search on their browser, just on their phone normally? You may notice that there's a small blue dot below that has your location, right? So we're using GPS to target there. The idea behind that is that's actually a HTML5 element on a web page that's accessing the GPS chip in the phone, right? HTML5 gives developers and companies the ability to access functionality on the device. So we also launched, we're using our logos quite a bit to showcase this stuff. So did anyone see the Jules Verne logo, like 10,000 Leagues Under the Sea, where you could actually move it through the O's? If you did that on a mobile device or on a laptop that has an accelerometer, you could actually shift it from side to side and it will move it as well. And that's HTML5 builds. So at the basics of mobile, that's all very, very interesting stuff and probably, where people will be 2-3 years from now. But when you think of what you can do now, the first thing is you've got to consider what people want from your mobile site. Why are they coming in? Much like Maya did when they said, if people on a mobile device, they're looking for a shop. Be found, in terms of just simple search and from AdWords, make sure you've got separate campaigns. There's very different strategies that you implement between desktop and mobile, and also different functionality like click to call and things like that. If you have a call center, actually having people the ability to click and go straight through is really important. And then the main thing is, like I said, launch now. Don't be afraid to fail, but make sure you learn from the failings, right? Make sure you learn from, site usage, mistakes that are made, that you can actually go back, use things like Google Analytics or whatever, or OmniTour tracking or whatever you're using to make sure you iterate and improve over time. Because currently, like best practice in mobile, it's not that prolific in Australia. And it's going to take a few companies to, actually learn from mobile to do it. And like I said, it's better to do it now when it's 10% than when it's 30% in a year and a half. From Google's standpoint, we have a pretty strong search engine in Australia in terms of mobile as well. We have our mobile display network, which is one of the largest in Australia, and then we also have YouTube as well as a platform. So if you have representatives at Google, feel free to reach out to them and talk to them about mobile and what we can do to help out. We're always happy to have a chat, and it's one of our big bets for the next couple of years. And just as a summary, you can already review campaign performance now if you're looking at AdWords. You separate out the campaign so you can do different implementations. You can do handset carrier targeting with Google AdWords as well. So you can even do like iPhone customers on Telstra, right? So you can even get down to the level of almost doing demographics. That a Telstra customer is different to a Vodafone customer. You can do a different message, right? If a network is better than another one. So for example, Telstra's network, the NextG network, is probably the best in Australia. You could probably load a site that has more images on that. Whereas if you're doing, Optus or Virgin, you might take away some of those images so the page loads faster. The idea that you can get to that specific execution, is the power of online targeting on mobile. Understand appropriate ad text, change language, change keywords. Don't just copy campaigns across. It's a good start, but you really have to come up with a plan that's completely different. It's a completely different bidding environment as well. On a desktop, there's 11 ads. On a mobile, there's only 5. And the 2 at the top are pretty strong. So you need to have different bidding strategies as well. I know quite a few car insurers that actually bid higher on mobile devices than they do on desktop to get click-to-call to come up in the top 2 ads because they have very call center driven models. And like I said, test, track, and iterate. And with that, I'll pass over to the next speaker.